Most people think anger is the problem. I think anger is a language most of us were never taught to read. I grew up in a home shaped by anger, the kind that gets passed down without anyone questioning where it came from. Later, I realized that my parents' generation grew up with scarcity and all kinds of systemic hardships, so much so that anyone in those circumstances would be furious, but they were never allowed to express that anger. Over the years, I encountered anger everywhere, in workplaces, in relationships, in strangers, in myself, as I study and heal. And by the way, I see healing as a lifetime process, not a one-time thing. So as I study and heal from the trauma of others' anger outbursts, I realize something. Anger is not about what happened objectively. It is about us. It lives in every one of us in the first place. Also, anger is not always loud and explosive. There are forms of anger so subtle that we don't even recognize them as anger. I'll explain that later. This channel exists because anger is everywhere right now, and almost nobody is translating it. By translating, I mean not managing it away, not suppressing it, but actually reading what it's trying to say. I nerd out on two things when it comes to this: science, including psychology, psychiatry, and neuroscience, and Eastern philosophies. Not as theory, but as tools that are easy for anyone to use. If you're someone who's willing to look inward, sit with complexity, and do the real work, I'm glad you're here. Some anger carries a message worth listening to about your boundaries, your values, what you've buried or been denied. That anger even pointed out successful career paths for some of the world's most impactful figures. That anger deserves attention, not suppression, but anger that spills outward, into relationships, into online exchanges, into the people closest to you. That one needs to be named, tamed, and decoded. And honestly, there are tons of techniques that can help you do exactly that. Stuff from psychology or philosophy that actually works. Based on this insight, I've developed a dual framework that can help you put anger into the right category that it belongs, so we deal with them the right way. I'll unfold how to leverage the framework in the next episodes. Now, we already know that anger lives in all of us. It's not a bad emotion. It's a neutral one. When we listen to it, it can do us a lot of good. But when we suppress it or process it wrong, it can destroy everything in seconds. One thing worth pointing out is that anger isn't always loud and explosive. Both ancient contemplative traditions and modern clinical psychology treat anger as a broad spectrum, or a family of states. They prove that tiny annoyances, deep-seated bitterness, and heavy disappointments are not separate from anger. They're its various stages, internalizations, or direct ingredients. In Buddhist psychology, anger is classified under dvesha, which is often translated as anger, hatred, or aversion. It's one of the three poisons at the very center of existence. Buddhism views anger not as a single reaction, but as a broad spectrum of resistance to reality. Taoism looks at emotions through the lenses of energetic balance and the wuxing, aka 5 elements. It treats emotions as moving energy. When energy is smooth, there is peace. When it is blocked, it changes form. In Taoist medicine and philosophy, anger is housed in the liver. However, liver energy stagnation doesn't just show up as a screaming fit. Its primary, everyday symptoms are irritability, tiny annoyances, a frequent sighing of disappointment, and resentment. Modern clinical psychology uses empirical frameworks to show that anger is a composite emotion. On the surface are anger outbursts or irritability, whereas under the surface lie disappointment, hurt, bitterness, anxiety, and/or tiny accumulated annoyances. In fact, anger is largely classified as a secondary emotion by psychologists. The primary emotions behind anger include disappointment, fear and insecurity, sadness, shame, burnout, and more. This means anger rarely stands alone. It is a defensive shield deployed to protect us from softer, more vulnerable primary emotions underneath. That gives us another really important realization. That is, anger could be quiet, it could be unnoticeable, it could be bearable. Anger could be simply anxiety. It could be that annoyed moment, that forced smile, that disappointed moment where your mom didn't buy you the new pair of shoes as promised. Over time, those nonviolent fuels of anger can eat up a person's integrity, slowly erode one's inner peace, and turn them into angry monsters. The good news is we can start today with one simple action to deal with it, that is, to notice it. Further, you can write it down. This is actually one of the most powerful tools you can use to prevent anger buildup from ever enlarging. I'm serious. In clinical psychology, putting your anger into words and examining it is considered one of the most accessible and effective tools for breaking the cycle of chronic anger. Also, in neuroscience, there's a famous maxim coined by Dr. Dan Siegel, name it to tame it. The simple act of logging and explicitly naming the primary emotion underneath your anger completely changes how your brain processes the event. What you name no longer owns you. So, write it down, whether you're always perceived as a nice person and have never lost temper, or you've had your explosions and lost someone or something that was valuable to you. Write down that bitterness when you were criticized. Write down that annoyance when somebody didn't hold the door for you. Write down that tiny sadness when you lost your fave hairband. And of course, write down that anger your partner lets you down. That anger when you see somebody's being treated unfairly. Write down that anger when you were wiped out of a promotion. Write them all down. It'll be the most crucial step you can take to control destructive anger outbursts and best use anger as a life-changing signpost. If you really want to start now and get one step closer to self-mastery, you'll be interested in an anger logbook that I created. Click the link in the show note to check out the simplest version of my anger logbook series. It has only 2 columns: what you felt angry or annoyed or disappointed about, and when. The goal is to help you start simple. If you've never logged your anger, annoyance, disappointments, or bitterness, or whatever, I guarantee it's worth it. It'll give you a dedicated place to store all your anger before it grows to a destructive level. But no pressure. If you have your journal or a new notebook, go grab it and write down the most recent anger or bitterness or annoyance you felt. I'll see you, the lighter, less irritated version of you, in my next video.